Today, we're getting a special guest on the podcast, Adam Bornn from Parallel Wealth. We're going to talk about 5 lessons about retirement planning. Fellow investors, bonjour. This is Mike Vero, founder of Dividend Stocks Rocks and passionate investor. You're listening to the Dividend Guy blog podcast, where I and my co-host Veronique will help you invest with more conviction so you can enjoy your retirement. Dividend Growth investors, bonjour. Mike Vero here. You're listening to the Dividend Guy podcast. I am with Vero today, but we're not going to talk a lot together today. It's a special episode, right?
Right. We do things a bit differently today, Mike. We invited Adam Bornn to our Retirement Loop community not so long ago for what we call our Loopers show. And we received so many great comments about this webinar and Adam in general that we thought of sharing it with you. So first, Mike, who's Adam?
Adam Bornn, you probably know him a little bit more from his YouTube channel. He is a certified financial planner. He has built his own firm called Parallel Wealth in BC, and he has this amazing YouTube channel with over 100,000 followers. He talks about retirement planning, of course, but more specifically, he's using case studies as examples on how you can frame your decision, how you can understand a little bit more about what's the impact of each of your choices. Because when you get to retirement, there are like so many different decisions that you have to make. And sometimes you're not even sure what to do. And then you look at your neighbor, you look at your friends and family, and they're all doing different things. So it just adds up to the confusion. You're not too sure. And the reality is, and we have said that often on the show, is it depends, right? Because each situation is different. So what I really like about Adam is he is trying to clear up that noise and show you, okay, in this kind of case, here's the framework. Here's how you should make your decision. Instead of giving you the way to do it, he's going to explain you how to think about that. One other thing that I really enjoyed about Adam's discussion is he was telling us is financial firms is all about the US financial planning model, which means that when you think about retirement planning, it should be all about making the plan first and then invest. And this is something that we share, we both share in terms of mentality, is there are so many different strategies that could work. There are so many stocks that could be great or not, an ETF. But in reality, what you really need is a very solid plan. Because once you have the plan and you stick to it, well, the investment is going to do what it's going to do. But overall, you're going to achieve your retirement goals. So anyways, just to say that I'm a big fan of Adam, had a lot of fun. And it's kind of funny because we started talking before we recorded the webinar, and I almost forgot to press play. And then here I am right now already babbling about Adam for like 3 minutes. So you get the vibe here.
So Adam, like you've said, nicely covered 5 lessons for retirees, and then he also answered like some live questions. To make it easier to digest, we've separated it into 2 parts, one today, one tomorrow. So hit pause and the subscribe button underneath our podcast logo so as not to miss part 2. Of course, this episode will give you listeners an idea of what we do at Retirement Loop, but we will also hold a public retirement webinar tomorrow, May 22nd at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So you can subscribe now at retirementloop.ca/webinar. Mike, what will they get during this webinar?
So I decided to frame that webinar to answer 6 of the most common questions retirees have. So we're going to talk about how can you find if you have enough to retire, which is, of course, the number one question. And there are like multiple ways to find the answer to that. And then I'm going to share some tricks on how you can pay less fees on your investment, how you can pay less taxes, because that's also a major concern. At retirement, you get so many different income sources, and at one point you are forced to withdraw from some accounts. So it gets even more difficult to find out how much taxes you're going to pay, and if there are any ways you can diminish that amount. We're also going to go on the nice side, where I'm going to answer the question, how can I spend more and still be okay? So how can you improve your retirement budget? Maybe tick off a little bit more of your items on your bucket list and still be okay as you grow older. We're going to also look at what happens if the market crashes this year and you're about to retire? What will be the impact? How you can mitigate that impact? How you can navigate through all this? Because it's a very stressful moment for retirees if they see their portfolio going down by 25% in a single year.
Right.
And finally, we're going to answer the more global question: how do I know that I'm okay? You get your plan, you know where you're going, but still inside of you, you want to double check, you want to triple check, you want to quadruple check your plan. You really want to make sure that everything is fine. I mean, but there's no way back, right? So, how you can find out those answers. And of course, those 6 questions are going to come with 6 retirement upgrades. So, a bunch of tips, actionable intel that all Canadians will be able to use in retirement.
So live seats are limited to 500, so you might want to save your spot for the live session now or get the instant replay at retirementloop.ca/webinar. So if you can't join the live session, you'll get the free replay instantly, like a couple of minutes after it ends. So you don't want to miss that. retirementloop.ca/webinar. Now, without further ado, here's Adam Bornn from Parallel Wealth.
I hope you are doing well. We do have a special guest today. We do have Adam Bornn from Parallel Wealth that is going to join us today. So just going to take like maybe a minute just to let you log in. Just say hi in the comments. So hello, Mark, Sheila, Roland from Toronto. So I hope that there won't be any fight between Mark and Roland, between Ottawa and Toronto. That was quite a game yesterday. It was kind of crazy. Hopefully, my Canadians will survive one more day tonight. I mean, at this point, it's just like gravy, right? It's just a bonus. Hello, Randy, Paul, Janet, Lloyd. So as you can see, Adam, we do have a lot of people here today for the webinar. All right. So we're going to start. As usual, the presentation is recorded, is going to be republished on Retirement Loop. And if you have any questions at any time, like you can just ask for it. And at the end of our chat, we're going to talk about like 5, 6 major mistakes that retirees are making. Any questions, you can put in them, and then we're going to have like a Q&A at the end of this, well, the discussion, because there's not like really a presentation with slides or anything. All right. So Adam Bornn, CFP from Parallel Wealth, I would like you to tell me what you like most about your job as a starting point.
Yeah, so I mean, I got in the business to help people. So, at the end of the day, and especially as it's transitioned to retirement, it's fun on a day-to-day basis, like walking people into retirement. And especially when our team does plans and it's like, yeah, you plan to retire. I did one yesterday. They plan to retire in about 5 years from now. It's like, no, you can retire at the end of this year. So those are the things I enjoy. Like actually,
That's a
helping
good
people
feeling.
not just building the plan, but like saying, hey, you can actually not work 4 more years that you thought you had to work. And be totally fine. So it's just, my wife used to work in labor and delivery, right? And being a nurse, there's many aspects of people dying, people coming in. I would say labor and delivery is the best place to work because it's like life coming in, right? And I enjoy
Yeah.
that part of the retirement. Like you've seen people that have worked 40 years plus or minus walking into like the dreamland kind of idea, right? And in final retirement. And so, we enjoy doing that. I love doing that every single day. So
That's great. So you do have your office with Parallel Wealth, but you also have a YouTube channel that is actually quite popular. You do have like over 100,000 followers. That's kind of crazy. I mean, it's pretty rare that we see financial planners that are actually doing videos on that regular basis. What's the story behind a YouTube channel? And I'm going to put that in the chat, guys, so you can go there and visit.
Yeah, perfect. So the YouTube channel launched during COVID. So the summer of COVID 2020, I did an internal course. So we did like a financial master class, which I always say is like everything we should have learned in high school. So it was more geared to that 20, I'll say 20 to 50-year-old market. And then September of 2020, we started dabbling into, and it was really to get content out there. Like we were, in lockdown, couldn't see our clients, but we wanted to provide advice and do something for the fees that we were charging and just get information out there. So it was actually geared to like we'd post it, send it to our clients. And that was really how it started. It wasn't to kind of create this larger thing that it's become, but it's been fun. I guess the ride's been fun along the way too. But yeah, we started for clients shortly after about April 2021. Some of our videos kind of caught the algorithm, and then it's continued to grow from there. And our focus is kind of moved to retirement only. So now we only work with retirees. We have people contact us outside of 10 years from retirement. We have other planning firms that we refer it out to. So it's been a nice stay in your lane, do what we do best, and kind of not get outside of that.
I also like the fact that in your videos, and it shows that you started this for your clients in the first place, because it's like full of actionable tips. It's not just like, yeah, come and see us, but actually
Yeah.
tackling one specific problem for each video and providing solutions. So I really like how you've built that. Were you able to convince any of your like team members to join in some videos, or it's always about you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I try to get as many. We did our last video, actually, Michael from our team was on there. So yeah, we have 8 planners on our team, all CFPs. So we have a really wicked team here, very smart. Some of them are like Michael worked at Sun Life as a VP for many years, so very experienced planning team as well. So yeah, trying to get them on more and more. They're busy taking care of clients and that kind of
Of
stuff.
course.
So my goal is to get them on like once a quarter, each of them.
That's
And
nice.
yeah, so that's the end goal. But yeah, definitely trying to get them on more and more because I do want to get away from like the face of YouTube. I want to, ideally, it's like literally all 8 of us are just like cycling through doing all the videos. So it's trying to get it in away from me, which would be good. So
Yeah.
my wife always says I'm more of a face for radio than TV. So the quicker we can get me off there, the better, I think. Yeah.
That's funny. All right. So today we're going to talk about mistakes that,
Mhm.
or like stuff that is being overlooked by people about to retire, or what I like to call them young retirees, in the sense where you just started your retirement. So no matter if you retire at like 50, 60, 65, 70, it's more about, okay, you're starting your retirement plan. And then there are a long list of decisions to be made. And some of them you better like start thinking about it a little bit before you're not able to reverse those decisions. So the first one you wanted to talk about, and it's one of my favorite actually, is not spending enough.
Yeah, so most people when they enter retirement, I always say retirement's 90% psychological, 10% financial. Once you have the financial piece mapped out and stuff, it's really now, getting the mental piece going. And that's where this one comes in, not spending enough. And I think the reality is most people walk into retirement with the mindset that they had pre-retirement. All of a sudden they're paying themselves. It's like, oh, I don't want to draw down my account, especially times like this where well, my portfolio is down 5, 10, 15, 20%. Like, I don't want to sell anything. And we'll get to that
Yeah.
point later in this video on another tip for you guys. But yeah, a lot of people hold their money too close to their chest. I would say in the first 1 to 3 years of retirement. And for the average Canadian, if you're retiring 60, 65, you only have 10 ish years of what we call the go go years of retirement, where you can actually travel and do stuff and you're healthy. And so if you're burning 20, 30% of those years because you just don't know what to do and you're holding your money, you don't know how much you can spend, you're wasting a lot of good years. Like you worked hard to get here. So definitely a lot, I would say majority, like over half of Canadians aren't actually spending enough in retirement. Now, what that does is it kind of pushes everything down the road. From a tax issue, you have too much money later on, your RSP is too big, you're gifting way too much money to your kids or grandkids at that point, which that's a great problem. And I always say it to people like in your 80s, 90s, we have a client that's 100 actually. And, those older clients, I always say, like, if they pass away or they have a lot of money later in life and structured properly, they look back and they say, look, we did everything we wanted to do. Even though we have lots of money, we did everything we wanted to do. What I don't want for everyone watching this and any of our clients is, in their 70s, 80s, 90s, say, if I knew I had this much money, I would have done things different,
Yeah.
right? Like that's what we're trying to avoid. And that's what, as you build out your retirement plan, that should be one of the big goals is like making sure you're spending as much now without compromising your future you. But you don't want to get to future you and look back and say, I wish I did that because it's too late. Like it's a point statistically 71 to 73 where your ability to do a lot of your bucket list items does drop off.
And what would be your trick to help people make that mindset shift where you have to stop paying yourself first and then you actually have to withdraw first? Or I don't know like how to make that mindset, but what would be your trick to help people feel comfortable spending that money at the beginning?
Yeah, I think it all comes down to fleshing it out in a plan. So sit down with your financial planner, or if you do your own plan, whatever it is, like whatever median it is that you build your plan, have a plan. Because without a plan, which more than 50%, it's like 70% of people walk into retirement in Canada with nothing, no plan at all, which is bonk. It's like getting in a car and it's like, where are you going? It's like, I don't know, I'm just going to drive, right? It's like, well, that makes no sense at all. So get a plan because the plan will actually dictate how much you can spend. Now, again, if you're doing a DIY plan, it may not be perfect, but at least it gives you some guidance, right? Like it's better to start with something than nothing. That's step one is figure out like, okay, I can go spend $5,000 a month and not run out of money later on, conservatively. Perfect. So that's step one. Then step two is you need to figure out like, where should that money be coming from, right?
Yep.
Because again, what you want to talk about, one of the tips for later is like building a bit of a cash wedge. So again, like being prepared for this. Because again, I would never want to talk to any, the 61 people watching you, never want to talk to any of you where you're like, yeah, we had planned a big trip in April of 2025, but portfolio drop, we didn't want to sell our investments. It's like, no, that should have been planned 1, 2, 3 years ago. Like that money shouldn't be in the markets. So that's where it all ties together. And it's a lot easier where if you can kind of set up a consistent cash flow to match the plan, then it's just coming in. Like the idea is to set up, if you're paid bi-weekly pre-retirement, set up your investments to pay you bi-weekly.
Yeah,
Like
that's good.
just have it automated. You shouldn't be going in there all the time, selling this, pulling the money out, like automate it. And there's easy ways to do that.
Hey, dividend growth investors, this is Vero. Mike is currently taking a sip of water, which gives us 10 seconds, and I literally mean 10 seconds to grow the podcast together. Go on Spotify or Apple Podcast, hit pause, and then under our logo, you'll see two very interesting buttons. One to subscribe, hit that subscribe button now, and then give us a 5-star rating. Our goal is to help more investors just like you. So please spread the love. Thank you.
So literally like transforming your portfolio into your next employer, just giving you that paycheck all the time so you don't have to worry about anything. And one thing that I like to do when I run those plans as well is to go with a conservative plan and then go with kind of like a worst case scenario plan. So it gives you also the budget room that you have. So maybe you want to retire with $65,000 and that works. And then you run the numbers with like lower expected returns, higher inflation, like put everything in there that makes it worse. And then if your plan still works at 65,000 or maybe it goes at 60, you know that you're a lot more comfortable spending that money and having some maybe like a little bit of extra for the go-go years, like which is usually typically, like you said, 10, 15 years until you're like in your mid 70s. After that, of course, you're going to slow down a little bit. Your expenses are going to drop. And then it makes it easier to navigate through the spending method.
Ties into the laddered income. So that's one thing. It's kind of not a tip, but you touch on it there where when you build a retirement plan, you're going to talk to anyone that's walked through retirement. They spend more early in retirement than later. Now, sure, the odd person needs to go to a care home, but if they own real estate, they're typically selling that. So that's the small percentage. But for most Canadians, you're going to spend more in from say 65 to 75, and then less from 75 to 85, and then even less from 85 to 95. So we call it the laddered income. Like ladder, give yourself more later, a little bit less, a little bit less. Because a lot of people just create a flatline income. Well, that's not how you're spending it. So again, like, okay, yeah, flatline income works, perfect. But what happens is you're going to have too much later on. You're not going to be able to spend as much as earlier. So ladder it out. So if your average is 60,000 a year flat, why not take 65 or even maybe 70, and then 55, and then 48? Because $4,000 a month when you're 85 is, trust me, hard to spend that.
Definitely. That's a pretty good point to see how you can ladder the income. That's good. Mistake number 2, taking CPP and OAS at the wrong time. Yeah. So how about like, what is the wrong time? And yeah, I'm curious about to hear about that because there are like so many discussion. I've read a lot of things as well. We actually had like a big discussion on Retirement Loop about when is the right time to take CPP and OAS. So I'm curious about your take on this one.
Yeah, it's a hot topic, and someone wrote. I actually did a podcast with Mark Beavis from Beavis Wealth this other day, and someone comments, "Adam and Parallel Wealth are all about CPP at 70," and it's like, well, we're not, but like we do thousands of plans, and 99% of the time, it will give the client more money based on life expectancy, et cetera, et cetera. Also, delaying CPP. So I'll get back to answer your question, but delaying CPP will allow you and give you more years to melt down or draw down your tax strategy, right? Like we all want more money from the government. Like most of us don't have a defined benefit plan, but yet we all have one in CPP. I get it. We paid into it just like you would a pension, but then we all take it. Like the average in Canada is 62. And like data after data after data shows that delaying your CPP and creating some, then using those years to create some strategy around melting down other accounts and all that will give you more based on like an average life expectancy. So now, again, there's going to be people that need to take it earlier because they need the cash flow. They haven't saved enough, whatever it is. So there, is there a perfect time? I would say for 99%, it does make sense to delay your CPP, but as long as you're doing other things in that time. But I look at CPP and you think, well, what other investment out there can you get a guaranteed 8.4%? I don't know any. So if the government, in an index, like a bulletproof investment, like CPP is funded for the next 72 years and beyond. Like that's what they. So if I can get 8.4% guaranteed, that's a great rate of return. I can't get that anywhere up there. So I'll bump that off and take that rate of return and melt down some of the other RSPs. A lot of people though say, well, then you're spending down your money. right? It's like I don't have as much of my money anymore. I've spent it down. I'm relying on the government. To some extent, that's true. You're not melting down all your money, obviously, at that point through your 60s, but it's also guaranteed, right? Like if I said, hey, instead of having your $1 million RSP, would you just rather have a defined benefit pension plan at 5, 6 grand a month, whatever it is to cover your income, indexed to inflation? Most people would,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, I think a lot of people, you asked about like when is the wrong time? The wrong time is when your neighbor or when your coworker. And that's where a lot of people make that decision off of, unfortunately. It's like, well, Sally next door took it at 63. So, like, we're next door neighbors. We must be a lot alike. So, I'm going to take it at 63 as well. So, a lot of people leave a lot of money on the table when it comes to the Canadian pension plan. Old age security, not as much. There's less of a benefit, obviously, to delay it. Typically, OAS, you delay only if you have some clawback. Again, run these numbers in software and figure out where that sweet spot is for you. But I see a lot of people delay CPP and then they live off cash. It's like, well, I got an inheritance or I downsized, so I got a $500,000 cash. So I delayed my CPP and lived off cash, but they haven't drawn down their RSP. So then
Mm.
there's, well, you kind of missed a lot of the tax planning. Now, some people do that to get GIS. Won't get into that here. We've run that a lot of times too, where, I'll say manipulator or restructuring stuff
Yeah.
to GIS typically doesn't work. You end up paying more tax. So yes, you get money from the government. You give back more in the form of taxes through your lifetime. So again, very situational. So I won't jump into that there, but I do encourage you, everyone watching this, to at least run the numbers. Like I always say, I don't care when, like for our clients, I don't care when you take CPP. I care that you know the difference between taking it at say 60, 65, 70, somewhere in between. That's what should matter to you too. Don't let your advisor say, don't take it at 65. Like, well, why? Like, what if I take it earlier? What if I take it later? How does that affect my plan and cash flow?
And what I find interesting with like making a link with mistake number one is if you're using a little bit more of your money to tick all your bucket list and spend a little bit more, enjoy life, well then you know that later on you're going to be covered, as you said, something fully guaranteed, indexed to inflation. It's literally a defined pension plan, but if you delay it, well, it makes you a little bit more like flexible in the first years of retiring, so you can spend a little bit more knowing that there will be something left at the end. Well, if you do the opposite and you keep on spending, well, maybe you're going to think, well, what's going to happen to me at the age of 75? And then you say, well, I have that CPP OAS that is going to cover a good portion of it, and I can supplement with the other portfolio.
Yeah, exactly.
So mistake number three, and this is the one where, like you said, and I like to say, like the financial advice for you could be a great one and a terrible one for your neighbor. As you mentioned, like do not do like your next door neighbor, because two different people, two different situation. But most retirees forget to have a proper tax planning. So they just go along the flow and listen to whatever like friends, neighbors, family did in the past and think, oh, that should apply to my situation. We're both retired after all, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I'll give you an example that I did a plan the other day for clients, a doctor and an executive out of Ontario. And first off, we were able to get retirement a lot earlier. But when we ran the RSP meltdown delays, when we created like, I'd say like a typical, what makes sense for most, they were that 1%. It didn't make sense, but it gave them a couple $1,000s less every year. And they had hundreds of thousands of income. So they were in a great financial position. Their income needs were met. Their main goal beyond that was to really help their two sons go through post-secondary if they needed, they wanted to go for doctorate or master's or whatever, pay for that, help them with down payment, housing, all that kind of stuff. And if we didn't kind of restructure stuff in a certain way and it was unique to them, they would have paid a lot more tax. They couldn't have helped out their kids. Like they kind of put themselves in the corner. It was a great estate at the end of the day, but very heavily taxed. And that's where like everyone's situation is a little bit differently. So again, by default, typically if you want a good tax plan, yeah, delaying your CPP, drawing down your RSP a little bit earlier, making sure you're taking the max if you have a LIRA or a LIF account, maxing that to draw every year. So like these things typically will help. If I can give everyone on this thing one tip. So if you're building your own plan or whatever it is, look at your your average tax rate through retirement. And if you can keep your average tax rate as level as possible, typically within about 1 or 2% until your RSP is drawn out. So I'm going to say mid 80s, early 80s, something like that. But until that, if you can keep it very level, that's a good starting point. Like if I ever review a plan, that's the first thing I look at. And if it's all over the place, I say your plan sucks. Like that's a very good telltale sign of, is it even a good start?
And we see this often where retirees are trying to minimize taxes as much as possible in the first years. And then you see like the effective rate is like below 10%. And then all of a sudden, because you postponed everything down the road, it jumps to like 25 or 30%. And you're not exactly sure what happened there. But that would be a sign in general of bad tax planning, right? That would be kind of
Correct.
like a red flag of like, yeah, maybe you should run the numbers on a different way. And as you mentioned, use different kind of software. It doesn't really matter. But the point is, if your effective tax rate, your average tax rate is not always about the same, probably that you're missing something somewhere. There's probably like a few $1,000s of taxes that you can save.
Or tens or hundreds. Yeah. And what you said is actually very common. Like we see it all the time. It's like, they're retiring tomorrow and their current plan is now I have cash, whether they got a severance package, they got, downsize their house, inheritance, whatever, they have cash. Like we got 2-3 years of cash we're going to live on and pay zero tax. And it sounds great. We all want to pay zero tax, but then we build it out and say, look, we can actually pay a little bit now and average it out and smooth it out. Here's what it looks like. Like by early 70s, you break it even. By 80, you've saved 100 grand in tax. Like it does make sense to level out. I always say it's maybe a spouse or a close friend or something like that. Like if issues come up and you just hold them in, eventually it blows up down the road. That's your tax issue, right? Just let the conversation flow. Let your taxes flow. Like we don't want to, we're all tired of paying taxes, right? We pay a ton of tax here in Canada. And then a lot of you hit retirement and you make these decisions to actually pay more tax than you have to. And you leave comments on my YouTube channel and say, no, I'm living off cash. I'm taking my CPP at 60. I'm right, you're wrong. And it's like, I don't think anyone's right or wrong. It just depends if you want to pay less tax or more tax. So one tip, look at your average tax rate. Keep that as level as possible. And that's a really good starting point.
Yeah, and to make the bridge to the next one, I remember that I had a client that it did exactly what you said. They were about to retire, and then they got an inheritance, and they started to live off that cash. A, to save taxes, and B, because it was literally, oh, I put that in the bank account and I just withdraw money as it goes. Yeah, it was like high interest rate savings accounts or whatever. But the point was, whenever I need cash, I'm gonna withdraw money from there. And then when I met with them, they were about towards the end of that money, and they did not plan anything else after that. So they had like their pension, they had like CPP, OAS decision to make, they had a portfolio, but they had no clue where to start to take the money, and they were fully invested. And they were like, Mike, like the market is right now, it was dropping and everything was in stocks. So they were kind of like stuck there where not knowing what to do because they had no income plan. And that is exactly mistake number 4.
So that was part 1, listeners. Thank you so much, Adam and Mike, for this amazing content on retirement lessons. For our show notes and related content, visit thedividendguyblog.com/228. Make sure you do not miss part 2 tomorrow. Hit the subscribe button underneath our podcast logo and leave us a 5-star rating. Also, join us tomorrow for our 6 retirement upgrades webinar, retirementloop.ca/webinar. Until then, stay invested.
Stay invested. Hey, fellow investors, it's Mike here. I hope that you have enjoyed this episode. Please note that the Dividend Guy Blog podcast is at no time issuing buy or sell recommendation. Please do your own due diligence, as this podcast is recorded for information and hopefully fun purposes only. Make your research, make sure you do your stuff. We're not responsible for your losses or your profit after listening to this episode. And until next one, stay invested.